English Podcast Hub.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Easy English Conversation. I'm Mia and I'm here with Mark. So Mark, I have to tell you about something that happened last week that completely changed my study routine, and I think it's going to help so many of our listeners.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What happened? Did you discover some new study technique?
Not exactly a technique, but something just as important. So I was trying to study at my kitchen table like I always do, and I was getting so frustrated because I couldn't focus for more than 10 minutes at a time. I kept getting distracted, feeling restless, and eventually I'd give up and scroll through my phone.
Oh, I think I know where this is going. Was it the environment?
Exactly. I finally realized that my kitchen table is where I eat, where I pay bills, where I have stressful conversations, where I do everything except peaceful learning. My brain had associated that space with stress and multitasking, not with calm focus.
That's such an important realization. So, what did you do about it?
I spent one afternoon completely transforming a corner of my bedroom into a dedicated study space. And Mark, the difference was incredible. The very next day, I sat down in that new space and I was able to focus for 45 minutes straight without even trying. It was like my brain immediately understood, oh, this is the learning space. This is where we focus.
I love this. And this is exactly what we're talking about today. How to create a peaceful study space that actually helps you learn instead of fighting against you. Because I think a lot of people underestimate how much their physical environment affects their ability to concentrate and retain information.
Absolutely. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need a huge space or a lot of money to create an effective study environment. You just need to understand a few key principles about how our brains respond to physical spaces.
Perfect. So let's break this down for our listeners. Where should someone even start when they're thinking about creating a study space? What's the first thing they should consider?
The first thing I'd say is location, location, location. You need to find a spot in your home that can be dedicated primarily to studying or learning. It doesn't have to be an entire room, it could be a corner, a desk, even a specific chair, but it should be a space where studying is the main activity.
So you're saying it's important to have separation between your learning space and your living space, even if you're working within the same room?
Exactly, because your brain creates associations with physical spaces. If you study in the same place where you watch TV, eat dinner, or have stressful phone calls, your brain gets confused signals. It doesn't know whether it should be in relaxation mode, eating mode, stress mode, or focus mode.
That's fascinating. So by having a dedicated space, you're essentially training your brain to automatically shift into study mode when you sit down there. It's like a physical trigger for focus.
Precisely. And this is backed by research in environmental psychology. When you consistently perform the same activity in the same location, you create what's called a context-dependent memory. Your brain starts associating that specific space with that specific mental state.
So it becomes almost automatic. You sit down in your study space and your brain knows it's time to focus without you having to force it as much. That's really powerful.
It is. And here's something important. If you absolutely can't dedicate a permanent space to studying, you can create a portable study zone using specific objects. Maybe you have a special cushion you only sit on when studying, or a particular lamp you only turn on during study time.
Oh, I like that. So you're using objects as psychological triggers instead of relying solely on location. That's a great solution for people living in small apartments or shared spaces.
Exactly. The key principle is consistency and association. Your brain needs clear signals that say, this is learning time, this is focus time. Now, let's talk about the physical setup. What should your study space actually look like?
Okay, so someone has found their spot. What's next? What do they need to think about in terms of furniture and setup?
First, let's talk about seating, because this is where a lot of people go wrong. You need a chair that's comfortable enough that you won't be distracted by discomfort, but not so comfortable that you'll fall asleep or feel too relaxed.
So, finding that middle ground between a hard wooden chair and a plush armchair.
Exactly. You want alert comfort, not sleepy comfort. Your posture matters too. When you're sitting up relatively straight with your feet on the ground, it sends signals to your brain that you're in active mode, not passive mode.
That makes sense. I've noticed that when I study lying down or slouched in a really soft chair, I start feeling drowsy even if I'm not actually tired. The posture itself is telling my brain it's time to relax.
Exactly. And let's talk about your desk or work surface. Ideally, you want a clear, uncluttered surface. Studies have shown that visual clutter actually depletes your cognitive resources because your brain is constantly processing all those objects, even if you're not consciously aware of it.
So a messy desk isn't just aesthetically unpleasing, it's actually making it harder for your brain to focus.
Yes. Think about it this way. Every object in your visual field is competing for your brain's attention. If you have paper scattered everywhere, old coffee cups, random items from other activities, your brain has to work harder to filter out the irrelevant information and focus on what matters.
So the simple act of clearing your desk could actually improve your focus without you having to exert more willpower. That's encouraging for people who struggle with concentration.
Absolutely. And here's a practical tip. At the end of each study session, spend 2 minutes clearing your desk and setting it up for your next session. That way, when you come back to study, you're greeted by a clean, inviting space instead of yesterday's chaos.
I love that. It's like a gift to your future self. So we've talked about location, seating, and keeping things clean. What about lighting? I feel like that's something people often overlook.
Oh, lighting is huge. This is one of the most important factors in creating a peaceful study space, and it can dramatically affect both your mood and your ability to concentrate.
What kind of lighting is best for studying?
Ideally, you want natural light if possible. Studies have shown that natural daylight improves mood, increases alertness, and even helps with information retention. If you can position your study space near a window, that's ideal.
What if someone doesn't have access to natural light or they need to study in the evening?
Then you want to think carefully about your artificial lighting. Avoid harsh overhead fluorescent lights if possible. They can cause eye strain and create a stressful institutional feeling. Instead, use a good desk lamp with warm, adjustable lighting.
What do you mean by warm lighting versus other types?
Light has different color temperatures measured in kelvins. Warm light, around 2700 to 3000 K, has a yellowish tone and is easier on the eyes. It creates a cozy, calm atmosphere. Cool light, around 50,000 to 6500 K, is more bluish-white and can be energizing but also more harsh.
So for a peaceful study space, you'd recommend warmer lighting.
For most studying, yes. Warm lighting reduces eye strain and creates that sense of peace we're aiming for. However, some people find that cooler, brighter light helps them stay alert for certain tasks. The key is having adjustable lighting, so you can customize it based on what you're doing and how you're feeling.
That makes sense. So someone might use brighter, cooler light for active tasks like problem solving, and warmer, softer light for reading or reflective work.
Exactly. And here's another important tip about lighting. Avoid having your screen be the only light source in the room. If you're studying on a computer or tablet in a dark room, the contrast between the bright screen and the dark surroundings causes eye strain and fatigue.
So you should always have some ambient lighting in the room, even if you're working on a screen.
Yes, definitely. Your eyes will thank you, and you'll be able to study for longer periods without getting tired. Now, let's talk about something that I think is often overlooked: temperature and air quality.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about those as important factors. How do they affect studying?
Temperature has a bigger impact on cognitive performance than most people realize. If you're too hot, you'll feel sluggish and have trouble concentrating. If you're too cold, you'll be distracted by discomfort, and your brain will use energy just trying to keep you warm.
So what's the ideal temperature for studying?
Research suggests that the optimal temperature for cognitive tasks is around 21 to 22 degrees Celsius, or about 70 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. But this can vary a bit from person to person, so pay attention to how you feel. If you find yourself constantly adjusting your clothing or thinking about the temperature, that's a sign your study space isn't at the right temperature.
That's a good rule of thumb. If you're noticing the temperature, it's probably not right. What about air quality?
Air quality is surprisingly important. Stuffy, stale air can make you feel drowsy and reduce cognitive function. If possible, crack a window periodically to let in fresh air. If that's not possible, consider a small air purifier or even just a fan to keep air circulating.
I've definitely noticed that I feel more alert and awake in rooms with fresh air versus stuffy rooms. It's like my brain works better when there's good oxygen flow.
Exactly. And here's something interesting. Some studies have found that having plants in your study space can improve air quality, reduce stress, and even boost productivity. A small plant on your desk can make a real difference.
Plants, that's a nice, natural way to improve your space. Plus, they add a bit of life and color, which probably helps with the overall atmosphere. Speaking of atmosphere, what about decorating your study space? Does that matter?
It absolutely matters. The visual environment affects your mood and mindset. You want your study space to feel calm, organized, and inspiring, not chaotic or depressing.
So what should people think about when decorating their study space?
First, color matters. Different colors have different psychological effects. Generally, for a peaceful study space, you want to avoid very intense, stimulating colors like bright red or neon colors. Instead, think about calming colors, like soft blues, greens, or neutral tones.
Why do those colors work better for studying?
Blue is associated with calmness, focus, and productivity. Green is associated with balance and reduced eye strain. Neutral colors like beige, gray, or white create a clean, distraction-free backdrop. These colors don't demand your attention the way brighter, more intense colors do.
So it's about creating a visual environment that supports focus rather than competing for attention. What about personal items or decorations?
This is where you can personalize your space in a way that motivates you. You might have a vision board with your goals, an inspirational quote that resonates with you, or a photo that makes you feel calm and focused. But the key word here is minimal.
So you don't want to cover every wall with posters and photos?
Right. Remember what we said about visual clutter? Too many items in your visual field will drain your cognitive resources. Choose a few meaningful items that inspire you, and leave the rest of the space relatively clean and simple.
Quality over quantity when it comes to decoration. I like that. Now, let's talk about something practical. What about technology in your study space? How should people handle their devices?
This is such an important topic. Technology is both essential for modern learning and potentially the biggest source of distraction. You need to be very intentional about how you incorporate it into your study space.
What do you recommend?
First, if you're studying with a computer or tablet, position your screen so you're not straining your neck. The top of your screen should be roughly at eye level, and make sure you're at an appropriate distance, about an arm's length away from your screen.
That's for physical comfort and reducing strain. What about the distraction factor?
Here's where you need to be honest with yourself about your discipline. If you're studying and you don't need your phone, keep it in another room, not on silent on your desk, not in your pocket, in another room entirely.
That seems extreme. Why is that necessary?
Because research shows that even the presence of your phone, even when it's turned off, can reduce cognitive capacity. Your brain knows it's there, and part of your mental resources is allocated to not checking it. It's called brain drain, and it's real.
Wow, so just having your phone nearby, even if you're not actively using it, is making you less effective at studying?
Exactly. If you absolutely need your phone nearby for emergencies or because you're using it as a timer or study tool, put it face down and enable Do Not Disturb mode. But ideally, keep it completely out of sight.
That's a powerful tip. What about computers? A lot of people need them for studying, but they also have access to email, social media, and other distractions.
Great question. If you're using a computer, use website blockers during study sessions. Apps like Freedom, Cold Turkey, or browser extensions like Stay Focused can block distracting websites for set periods of time. This removes the temptation before it even starts.
So you're using technology to protect yourself from technology. That's smart. What about notifications?
Turn them all off during study sessions. Every notification is an interruption that breaks your focus, and it takes several minutes to fully return to the same level of concentration after being interrupted. Protect your focus time by silencing everything.
These are really practical tips. Now I want to shift to something a bit different. What about sound in your study space? Should it be completely silent, or is some background noise okay?
This is actually quite individual, and it depends on what you're studying. Some people focus best in complete silence, while others find that a bit of background noise actually helps them concentrate.
Why would noise help someone concentrate? That seems counterintuitive.
It has to do with how our brains process sound. Complete silence can actually be distracting for some people because they become hyper-aware of every little sound. A car passing by, someone walking upstairs, the refrigerator humming. These unexpected sounds can be more distracting than consistent background noise.
So having a steady, predictable sound can mask those unpredictable interruptions.
Exactly. This is why white noise, brown noise, or nature sounds work well for many people. They create a consistent auditory backdrop that masks irregular sounds without demanding attention themselves.
What's the difference between white noise and brown noise? I've heard both terms, but I'm not sure what makes them different.
White noise contains all frequencies at equal intensity, so it sounds kind of like static or a fan. Brown noise emphasizes lower frequencies, so it sounds deeper and more rumbling, like a waterfall or heavy rain. Some people find brown noise less harsh and more soothing than white noise.
Interesting. What about music? Can people study effectively with music playing?
Music is tricky because it really depends on the task and the person.
For simple, repetitive tasks, music can help maintain energy and motivation. But for complex cognitive tasks that require deep focus, especially tasks involving language, music with lyrics can be distracting.
Why are lyrics specifically problematic?
Because the language processing parts of your brain are trying to understand the lyrics while simultaneously trying to process whatever you're reading or writing. These cognitive tasks compete with each other, reducing your efficiency.
So, instrumental music would be better for studying than music with lyrics.
Generally, yes. Classical music, ambient electronic music, lo-fi hip-hop without vocals, these can provide pleasant background sound without competing for your linguistic attention. But again, some people focus best in complete silence, so experiment and find what works for you.
So, the key is self awareness and experimentation. Try different sound environments and notice which one allows you to focus most deeply. Now, we've talked a lot about the physical setup, but what about the psychological aspects of your study space? How do you make it feel peaceful and inviting rather than stressful?
Great question. This is where we move from the physical to the emotional atmosphere. One key element is creating positive associations with your study space. You want your brain to feel good about being there, not to associate it with stress and frustration.
How do you create those positive associations?
Several ways. First, never do stressful non-study activities in your study space. Don't check your work email there. Don't have difficult phone conversations there. Don't pay bills there. Keep that space associated only with learning and growth.
So, you're protecting the psychological purity of the space in a way. What else?
Start and end each study session with a small ritual that creates a sense of peace. Maybe you light a candle when you start studying and blow it out when you finish. Maybe you take 3 deep breaths before opening your book. These rituals signal to your brain that you're transitioning into learning mode.
I love that. It's like creating a mental doorway that you pass through when entering study mode. What about aromatherapy? Does scent play a role in creating a peaceful study space?
Absolutely. Scent is one of the most powerful triggers for memory and emotion. Certain scents can promote focus and calmness. Peppermint and rosemary are associated with increased alertness and memory. Lavender is associated with reduced anxiety and better sleep, so it might be good for evening study sessions.
So you could use essential oils or a diffuser in your study space to create a specific atmosphere?
Yes, but use them lightly. You don't want the scent to be overwhelming. A subtle scent in the background can enhance your study experience without becoming a distraction itself.
That makes sense. Now, we've talked about a lot of elements: location, furniture, lighting, temperature, decoration, technology, sound, and scent. That might feel overwhelming to some listeners. Where should someone start if they can't do everything at once?
Great question, because you're right, we've covered a lot. If you can only make one change, I'd say start with decluttering and organizing your study space. Clear off your desk, remove distractions, and create a clean visual environment. This is free. It takes minimal time and it will have an immediate impact.
So, the low hanging fruit is just cleaning up and organizing what you already have. What would be the second priority?
The second thing I'd focus on is removing digital distractions. Put your phone in another room and install website blockers on your computer. These are small changes that will dramatically improve your ability to focus.
So, we're starting with removing obstacles rather than adding new things. That's a smart approach because it doesn't require buying anything or making major changes.
Exactly. Once you've done those two things, then you can start thinking about improving lighting, adding plants, adjusting the temperature, or any of the other elements we've discussed. But start simple and build from there.
I think that's really important advice. People sometimes get overwhelmed by trying to create the perfect space all at once, and then they don't do anything. But small improvements compound over time.
Absolutely. And here's something else to remember. Your perfect study space might look different from someone else's perfect study space. Some people focus best in cozy and closed spaces, while others need open, airy environments. Some people need complete silence, while others prefer background noise.
So it's about experimentation and self awareness rather than following a rigid formula.
Exactly. The principles we've discussed today are guidelines based on research and psychology, but you need to adapt them to your own preferences, living situation, and learning style.
Before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or advice for listeners who are going to create or improve their study space?
I'd say remember that your study space is an investment in yourself and your learning. It doesn't have to be expensive or fancy, but it should be intentional. Every element of your space should either support your focus or, at minimum, not work against it.
And once you create that space, use it consistently. That's how you build those strong associations and make it a powerful tool for learning.
Exactly. Your study space is like a mental anchor. When you sit down there, your brain knows it's time to focus, and that makes everything easier. You're not fighting against your environment. You're allowing it to support you.
I love that. Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about and hopefully some practical steps they can take today to improve their study environment.
I hope so. And remember, small changes can make a big difference. You don't need to transform your entire home. Even dedicating one corner and keeping it clean and organized can dramatically improve your focus and make studying feel more peaceful.
Perfect. Thanks so much for listening to Easy English Conversation, everyone. Until next time, happy studying in your new peaceful space.
Yes, create that space, protect that space, and watch how much easier learning becomes. See you next time.